your brain needs stress in order to grow, in order to know what to pay attention to. I have found sleep to be one of the first things that gets affected when something starts going wrong in your brain. Mental health, you can define as the ability to tolerate the changes that happen in life. Depression is not simply a serotonin deficiency. Every time you feel like making an impulse decision, like say texting somebody that you should not, say like an ex, that is dopamine in your brain saying, do it. You will feel that thrill. Entire generation of students who will learn to be dependent on AI and they will never learn how to learn.
Want to learn brain hacks for better health and happiness? Well, you've got to watch this show. We have with us today Sid Warrior. A huge welcome to Your Health DeKoded. Thank you so much for being with us today. So straight off, I wanted to ask, what is that one brain hack that anyone can implement today? Better focus or productivity?
So thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here. There are several brain hacks that one can use. I have found that the easiest and the quickest one that someone can implement is learning how to breathe properly. So people don't really pay attention to their breath, but a breath tells you a lot about your mental state. And if you are distracted, if you're feeling anxious, then you are more likely to find it difficult to focus. So, switching your breathing style can help you focus better. So, one technique that I recommend to a lot of my patients as well is to learn how to breathe in the 4 is to 6 time frame. That is 4 seconds of inhalation, 6 seconds of exhalation, and continuing this pattern for around a minute. It should help you focus better.
So, whenever, like as children, when we were throwing tantrums and the parents said, just breathe, that works for adults as well.
Absolutely. We are all still children.
And we're all still children. Okay. Tell me, what is the difference between good stress and bad stress in terms of brain health, and how can people manage?
It's great that you asked me this question because people think that stress is bad overall, but that's not true because your brain needs stress in order to grow, in order to know what to pay attention to. So, good stress is your brain picking out something and saying, this is important to me. I don't want to lose this. So, that is good stress. Bad stress is when you are unable to switch off from that stress. If it remains with you so that even your rest and recovery is affected, that is what bad stress is. And bad stress taken to an extreme is what you would call as trauma. So it exists in a spectrum.
Okay, so that's interesting because, then it can also help us, what we discussed earlier, what to focus on and what not to focus on. But tell me, I was reading the other day and it said that certain emotions are actually physically stored in our body. So speak to me about that. And does neuroscience reveal anything about this concept?
So it is true that emotions do have a physical impact on us. So, for example, if you are angry at someone, what that basically means is your brain has activated the fear circuit. To be specific, it's an area called as the amygdala inside the limbic system in your brain, which is the primitive animal part of your brain. And if you feel threatened by something, you feel that there is an unfairness, there is injustice here, then your brain can trigger the fear response and that can go into a fight or flight response. And it is that fight part of that response that is anger. Now, anger is an emotion, but anger is also a physical reaction. Your heart rate goes up. All the muscles in your body become tense because your body thinks it is going to start fighting. The blood flow in your body increases. Your skin can become warm and flushed. All these changes happen in anger. Similarly, in other emotions as well, there are physical changes. So, yes, emotions do reflect in your body. The interesting part is that the vice versa is also true. So, in order to calm down, you don't have to just think about positive things. You can also do positive things with your body that will have a positive impact in your brain. So, stretching your muscles, relaxing your muscles, going for a walk, for example, all of these things will help you calm down. Even if the source of your emotion is still there, doing physical things will help you emotionally and mentally.
Interesting. So, leading from that, are there any early signs of poor brain health? That you kind of sort of look at and say, "Oh, this could be worrying, or this could lead to something."
Absolutely. So when your brain starts showing problems, so what you would call as cognitive problems, there are certain things that start going wrong in your behavior, in your mood, and in certain physical things like sleep. So I have found sleep to be one of the first things that gets affected when something starts going wrong in your brain. The other thing that starts going wrong is your gut. So if you have a change in your bowel movements, then you should look into your mental state. You should check whether are you feeling anxious, are you feeling stressed, because your bowel movements will change very quickly as a response to that. The other thing that can happen is memory problems. So, early small signs of memory loss can happen during that early stage of cognitive decline. So, if you've started forgetting what day it is, what date it is, if you've started forgetting things around the house, it might not be a permanent damage. It might just mean that you are feeling anxious in those days, but it is still a good marker for what is happening in your brain.
I'm definitely having brain issues. I'm forgetting too many things nowadays. But moving on, what is the difference between mental health and mental fitness?
Well, that's a great question. So, they are both very closely linked, of course. So, mental health you can define as the ability to tolerate the changes that happen in life. And if you are fit, that means that you have the ability to not just tolerate, but to actually thrive in whatever life situation you are in. Correspondingly, mental unhealth or mental disease means that the changes that happen in life do not allow you to thrive or even survive, but it actually pushes you down. And this is easier to understand in a physical context. So if you think about physical health, if you get COVID and you don't have any symptoms, you just have that infection, your immunity is good enough to take care of it. You might get one day fever, but the next day you're fine. That means that you're physically healthy, physically fit. Whereas if one COVID infection puts you in a bedridden state for a month, that means that physically you are not healthy. So there is a, there's like a balance. So mental health is just like physical health, except that the stressor is psychological in the mental health case.
Right. Okay. So, last, before I actually want to get on to all of those 2 a.m. conversation talk, there are some common myths about mental health medications or brain health.
Yeah.
Are there Is there anything that you want people to understand? You think there's a lot of sort of blurry lines between fact and fiction when it comes to mental health medications?
Yes, so there are a couple of issues here. Number one is that the entire pathophysiology of mental health is still not fully understood. So, in the history of mental health, when say if you go back 100 years, mental health was not taken seriously at all. So if somebody was feeling depressed or anxious, they would be dismissed saying, oh, you're just making it up. We have come a long way from there. Today we understand that it is an issue, it is a real problem that happens in the brain. But around 20 years ago we thought that serotonin was the molecule, the chemical in the brain that was going down, which causes depression. And so the drugs called SSRI, which is selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, these are basically chemicals that increase the amount of serotonin in your brain. They started being used for treating depression. But since then, we have understood that it is not that straightforward. Depression is not simply a serotonin deficiency. There are, in fact, many other molecules like dopamine, like endorphins, like opioids. All of these other chemicals also play a very important role. So it's not as simple as somebody has low glucose, you give them some sugar and they're better. Depression is not that straightforward. Mental health is not that straightforward. So there are other aspects to treating mental health apart from simple one is to one medication. So, more and more studies are finding the importance of movement, for example, the importance of community, the importance of things like dance and music, the importance of morning sunlight that cannot be replaced by just medication. So, we are moving towards a more holistic mental health treatment protocol.
So important what you spoke about sunlight, because there are so many of us who pretty much sort of don't get to see it at all, because finally when you step out in the evening there is no sun. So that is
Yeah.
just so interesting that that is, everyone has to make such a deliberate effort to get
Yeah.
out and get in the sun. Okay,
Yeah.
now why are 2 a.m. conversations so soul satisfying?
Well, do you want the scientific answer or the practical answer?
Both.
The
Science made simply and practically.
Brilliant. So the scientific answer is very interesting. When you go to bed, say you are supposed to go to bed when the sun sets. That's what the human body was wired to do. And the reason we know this is because the serotonin levels in your brain naturally go down at night, because the brain thinks that now you don't have any important decisions to make. Now, what's interesting and what's important to know is serotonin acts like the older brother of dopamine. Now, dopamine is the impulse molecule. So every time you feel like making an impulse decision, like say binge eating something, or doing that round of online shopping, or texting somebody that you should not, say like an ex, that is dopamine in your brain saying, do it. You will feel that thrill. And as long as serotonin is active in your brain, you are more in control. You will be able to say no to dopamine better. But when serotonin goes down, your self control goes down, which is why a lot of people end up making questionable decisions at 2 a.m. because dopamine is high, but serotonin is low, which is why you should go to sleep when your serotonin falls.
So basically, even if you're not sleeping at 2 a.m. in the morning, keep the phone away. Don't tweet that random opinion, or
No,
don't
don't.
text that ex. Got it.
Yes.
Okay. What happens to my brain when I flirt?
So flirting is an interesting topic because it has evolved over many years. Um, the essence of flirting is you are using language to judge whether you and somebody else have a connection or not. Now, flirting is not a new thing. There are mating practices that are seen in every animal, every species, and flirting is an extension of that. But because human beings have the gift of language, that mating practice has been evolving into a more linguistic form. So that is what flirting is. If you break it down, flirting essentially comes down to two things. You're sending a message across that A, I'm interested in you, and B, I am safe to be with, that it is in your interest to be with me. You want to send out these
Oh,
two messages. Somewhere in that flirting dance or that mating ritual, these two messages have to go out, that I'm interested in you and it is in your interest to be with me. Like I can take care of you or I can make your life better in some way, right? So every flirting practice or every mating practice essentially comes down to these two things. Now, how well can you put out these two messages will determine how good of a flirt you are.
so is there nothing known as harmless flirting? Not really interested in you, but I'm having a good time just flirting.
No, there's definitely harmless flirting. Although I would sometimes argue that is it harmless on both sides equally? There is there is some question mark on that. It might always be more harmless for one person, but the point is, all flirting is also a practice. So nobody gets good at flirting overnight because this is a tricky message to send out, that I'm interested in you and you're safe with me. I'm not too desperate, because desperation might not be a sign of safety. So, how do you send out such a complicated message in both verbal and non verbal ways? So that's a tricky message to send out, and people will slowly get the hang of it as they practice. It's just like any other form of communication. If you are not trying it out, you will not know how to do it.
So to be a better flirt, keep practicing because your brain's
Oh,
learning.
100%.
Got it. Okay. What's ego got to do with our brain, our mind? What is that reflective of? Where does it come from?
So, ego is a psychological concept. Neuroscientifically, there's no one area of the brain that you can point to and say that that is where ego is coming from. Ego is also a spiritual concept because it reflects your identity, who you think you are at your core. So, ego has many facets. At the essence, ego reflects your core primal motivations. So it reflects your core desires and it reflects your core fears. So what is it that you are chasing after and what is it that you're running from? That collection of those things is your ego. People say that as you meditate, as you get deeper into spirituality, your ego kind of starts diminishing. You have something called ego disillusion. And essentially, what that means is that you stop thinking from a core emotional space and you learn to get a bit detached from that. So, from the neuroscientific perspective, you go away from your limbic system more towards your prefrontal cortex. So, you're able to think more long term, you're able to think more about other people. So, selfless acts, altruism, all that comes when you go away from ego.
Interesting. There's so much talk about AI nowadays, and obviously, this is all being developed by humans, and there are coders and software engineers. Their biases and what is in their mind is going into developing these machines. Is there a time, and it's a very off question, but do you think there will be a time, because now they're saying that AI can think like humans, do you think AI will become spiritual as well?
I think AI will talk in terms that we connect with spirituality. But the problem is that can we judge its intention? Because spirituality is not just about saying the words. You can give the Bhagavad Gita to a 5 year old and tell that 5 year old to read the scripture, but where are the words coming from? And until we can prove that there is intention, we cannot say that AI has become spiritual. We can say that AI has read all the spiritual texts and it has put it together and it is now coming up with certain patterns of those words, and we will interpret it as spirituality. But if we can truly prove that AI is spiritual, then what we are saying is AI is conscious. And so consciousness has to precede spirituality.
But there is so much of talk about literally having this entity, so to speak, becoming conscious, but that's of course another conversation. Okay, back to humans. Why do we daydream?
We daydream because we must, first of all, because when our brain is
Is
taking
it
in
good for
information,
us?
it is necessary. Without
Okay.
daydreaming, our brain cannot collate all the ideas that it has collected. So if I'm reading a novel, I will understand the storyline, but it is later on when I kind of look away or my thoughts drift away that all those storylines combine and I form an impression of the story. Or if I'm reading something like a non-fiction book, in order for me to fully understand and remember what I've read, I need to daydream. So daydream is like a milder version of sleep. Now everybody's heard that during sleep your memories are consolidated, but daydreaming also helps to consolidate your memories. So our brains are wired to daydream. In fact, you daydream almost 40% of your waking time.
Wow. Okay, talking about sleep, what is the difference in terms of mind health and brain activity between light sleepers and deep sleepers? Like, why is someone a light sleeper?
So when you sleep, your brain goes into it's like a staircase. So imagine there are four levels of sleep. Level 1 and level 2 are the superficial levels of sleep, and level 3, level 4 are the deep levels of sleep. During your 6 hours of sleep, a normal person goes through level 1 to level 4, and then back to level 2, and then back to level 4, around 4 to 5 times. So each down and up is one sleep cycle. Now, if you are in level 3 and 4, you are in deep sleep, you are not aware of what is going on in the world around you. But if you're in level 1 or level 2, if somebody walks around you or somebody makes some noise, you will wake up because you are in superficial sleep. Now, people who are anxious may find it difficult to go into deep sleep. They will keep waking up at the slightest noise. It could also be people who have previously worked in jobs that required them to keep waking up. So, for example, if somebody was in the army or as a doctor, I know if after I've went through medical residency, because you might get a phone call anytime in the night saying that your patient is sick, come and see them. You never really go into deep sleep. So you are always in superficial sleep. And so even if a small sound happens in the room, you are awake. And this can be harmful over a period of time because what you get is fragmented sleep, because you need that deep sleep for full recovery to happen in your body. So if you have only light sleep over a period of time, your brain toxins can accumulate, and that could be one of the reasons why you have early onset memory problems. Even Alzheimer's can happen in that situation.
I'm now blaming all my problems of, sort of this light sleep brought on by running a newsroom where there was breaking news all the time and you were woken up in the middle of the night. But anyway, moving on.
That's
Okay,
true. I
now
should
we've
use
spoken.
I should use breaking news reporters as another example of light sleepers. You're absolutely right.
Because you were sort of woken up in the middle of the night, and there came to a point where I wasn't even surprised, or I was instantly awake,
Yep.
instantly responding to whatever was needed, and sort of, so that's so interesting. Okay, light sleep, deep sleep, egos, motivation, where did that come from? Why is someone more motivated than other people?
So motivation in the brain comes down to the molecule dopamine. So if you have dopamine in your brain, you have the motivation to do something, because dopamine is the movement molecule. So you have to understand that throughout evolution, all motivation was movement related. So if a tiger is feeling motivated, he would get up and hunt. So if you're not feeling motivated, you will lie down. That is also what happens in humans when dopamine levels fall, because you feel low. You don't feel active. That is what happens in depression. So people with depression may lie in bed for days because they don't feel like moving, because dopamine is low. Now, the way out of this is also ironically movement. So, apart from everything else, to treat lack of motivation, we have to stress on movement. So, as you move, dopamine levels increase. And as dopamine levels increase, you feel like moving more. So, it is a cycle. So, even if you don't have motivation, start with some light movement. It could be just flexing and unclenching and clenching your fist. That will give you enough dopamine to then get up from bed and maybe walk around the room. That in turn will give you enough dopamine to say, okay, you know what, let me put on my slippers, let me put on my shoes, let me go out for a walk. And you do a 30-minute walk, and you'll find yourself much more motivated to do that task than you felt when you were lying in bed. So it's like a staircase approach again to getting out of that demotivation funk.
So it's literally one foot in front of the other. Okay, speaking of
Absolutely.
motivation, why is it so difficult for smokers to quit? Where does that motivation come from? Why don't they get it? What happens?
So there we are talking about addiction, and that is a different topic, because when you are addicted to something, a couple of things happen. Number one, there is a tremendous amount of motivation to do that task because cigarettes do lead to a dopamine spike. So there's a lot of anticipation in a smoker that when I light up that cigarette, I will feel a certain level of pleasure. So there is a lot of motivation, except that the motivation is to do the wrong thing, which is what addiction is. And secondly, there is a lot of dependence. So not doing that action will make you feel low. It will lead to a dopamine crash. And so, in order to fix that, you have to go do that task. So, the way out of an addiction is different from a way out of any other form of low motivation. So, you'd have to educate. You have to make them understand that this is what is going wrong, because somebody with addiction has to be on your side. They have to feel like they have an addiction, only then can they come out of it. Number two, they will need a lot of psychological support because they will be feeling that low episodes. And C, they will need some form of replacement. That can be in the form of nicotine replacement therapy. That could also be in the form of psychological replacement. So, what other physical actions can they do that also gives them dopamine, adrenaline? So, some people might take up running or boxing or swimming. That there has to be something else that they do that can satisfy that craving.
So the replacement has to be there. Okay.
Yes.
We started with a hack for better focus. I want to end with a hack for better learning. So I'm a 16-year-old child, student. 5 things I can do for better learning.
Better learning. One of the challenges for a 16-year-old today is that the purpose of learning is under threat. So earlier, you would measure if a student has learned or not by their output. So if somebody has learned a subject, only then can they write an essay on it, or write a question answer on it. But today with AI, you may find students giving answers without having learned anything. So we have to first of all stress on the importance of the process of learning itself rather than just the output, because it is the act of learning that you want the student to learn. What they are learning has become less important, but do they know how to learn? That should be the main point of today's education. And I am really afraid that our education system will not change fast enough, and there's an entire generation of
Right.
students who will learn to be dependent on AI, and they will never learn how to learn. They will never learn to think critically. It doesn't matter if they know the subject or not, but do they know how to learn a subject? And unfortunately, they may not know. And that is a big risk. Coming to the actual hacks of learning, um, a few things that has really worked for me and the people that I have worked with are: number one, use physical movement. So we have been taught that sit in a classroom, sit in one place for 8 hours and try to focus on a blackboard, but that's not biological. All learning happens through movement. So if you're trying to learn, keep moving, keep walking around, keep writing something, even scribbling, doodling anything will help you memorize things better. Number two is teaching. So, whatever you've learned in the next 24 hours, teach someone. Teach them badly, it doesn't matter. Teach your mom, teach your dad, teach your dog. Just teach. Just as long as you're getting it
Yes.
out again, you are cementing whatever you have learned. Number three is learning through different senses. So if you're reading something through text, try to watch a video on it. Try to listen to a podcast on the same subject. Try to search for images of that topic. So the more senses and the more sources you get that information from, your brain will be able to create more patterns, and then you'll understand it better. And finally, the importance of sleep. So most there are many students who will study for 18 hours and sleep for 4 hours and wonder why they're not scoring in exams. But if you have not slept, then your brain has not stored anything that you've worked so hard to learn. So make sure that you're getting at least 6 to 8 hours of sleep if you're a student.
So very important. Learn how to learn and sleep well.
Yep.
Dr. Sid Warrior, thank you so much. This has been wonderful, and I think our audience is really going to learn so much, and enjoy all the information that you've given. That's it for this week. Join us again for Your Health Decoded.